Got a Troy Bilt Mustang RZT this morning we're taking a look at. Customer called us up and said, hey, this thing's still doing the same thing it was doing before you guys fixed it. Well, I pulled the original ticket. Ticket said they wanted a new belt, new blades on it, and leveled the deck. Well, that's all done. The customer says, though, that the belt is slipping at this point. It's bouncing around so much that it's not cutting. It's skipping grass. He says the left side's real low also. It's got the Kohler Courage 22 horsepower engine on it. Now, when this was in here, we double check them before we send them out. You know, I start everything up and run the blades and all that good stuff. We're gonna fire this thing up real quick. Sounded quite a bit different when it was brought in than what it did when we sent it out. See what this deck does when we fire it up. Deck doesn't sound the best when I shut it down there. It sounds like it's got some bearing noise and stuff. Doesn't sound horrible though. I would think that the view there probably wasn't horrible. You're gonna get some pretty good bouncing out of these mowers no matter what as far as the deck goes. Just kind of your lower end Troy Bilt stuff. You know, they just kind of move around everywhere. I don't think there's anything wrong with the deck or anything like that that we just fixed though. As we're running and we're seeing this engine is just bogging down like crazy. Now it's not, the speed is fine until we hit to the point where it's, where the blades are on. And then the speed drops down to, oh, I don't know, it's probably 2,400 RPM or so if I had to guess. Put that up a little higher than what I wanted it. There we go. That's about right. But as you engage those blades, you can tell that the mower's bogging down. Now, one of the most common issues or common causes of this issue is going to be bad fuel or a bad fuel supply to the mower. Now you can check it. This one here comes back and it goes in the tank down at the bottom there. It's just a little nipple coming out of the bottom of the tank. You can check all that, make sure the fuel flow is good, make sure the fuel quality is good also. Make sure that it's a known source. If you don't know where it came from, or if you bought a mower and it's got fuel in it, go ahead and switch it out. But see how your fuel flow is. You can take it off here. We did that to check the fuel. Fuel seems good. No issues there. We're gonna go ahead and take the spark plugs off independently to make sure each cylinder is firing independently at this point. It sounds like it's bogging down. It sounds like it's running on one cylinder. Now at that point, you're still going to get about 11 horsepower out of it. With this deck, it's obviously not going to cut very well. You're barely going to get through anything, if anything, and that's what this customer's saying is happening. But he's thinking it's the belt slipping, and that's the issue. Let's go ahead and pop one of these off. See what happens. And you can tell somebody's been into it before, obviously. There's, broken off bolts, there's bolts missing, the thing's barely held on. Obviously we'll want to get some bolts back in that before we finish it up or before we send it back. Alright. No start on that cylinder. Now what that means is that the spark and everything's good on this side. We know that because it ran when it was plugged in on this side. We know that the valve train and everything is good because this whole side ran independently of this one when it was unplugged. Now this one here, we could have an issue with the valves where one's stuck open or something like that. We could also have an issue with the spark. I always like to start with the spark because that's kind of the easiest one to diagnose. Sometimes it's as easy as a spark plug, not normally. I was gonna pull the plug out, but I'll probably just grab another plug and hold it to the side. Here's my spark tester. Now if you don't have a spark tester, you can grab another spark plug. You can just kind of hold it to the side. I like to just grab a rag and as I'm turning it over, look for it. We'll do that real quick on this one. Check it first with the spark checker. Showed green for a second. Take that other side off. I don't know why it shut off like that. Yeah, see, I've seen that happen a couple times with this spark checker where it doesn't want to work for certain instances. So let's go ahead. We're just going to hold this to the side. And we're going to look and see if we got spark. Now, there was a little bit of something. Definitely not much. Looks like we're not getting any spark, and that's why this side is not firing. I'll take the top off. Shouldn't be too hard of a feat since half of the bolts that sit around the outside aren't even in it. Looks like we got those two. I think we just got these two. Wrong bolts. I guess if they hold it on, they hold it on, but we'll get some better ones put in there. Looks like we got a bunch of taped up wires up top. I'm not sure that he wants us to worry about those. Or looks like this, the laminations on this coil, I'll get a little closer up here in just a second, but the laminations look pretty bad. They're pretty well separated down in here. We're gonna disconnect just the kill wire, which is what was hooked up on the bottom. So now this thing, beware if it does start, you will not be able to kill it immediately. So make sure there's nothing in the way. Make sure there's no way that anything can get caught in the flywheel, because if it starts at this point, you know, we know we'd have an issue with the kill or something like that, but you're not gonna be able to turn it off right away. It'll take a second after you turn it off for the solenoid to shut fuel off to it, so it won't be long, but doesn't look like I'm getting anything. Figured maybe we get lucky and it'd fire right up. See if we can get that on cam there, see if it'll spark. Not a thing on it. Not a spark whatsoever. So it's disconnected here with the kill wire. This coil with the magnet spinning over the top of it should create a spark. Now there is a little bit of rust. That's just surface rust. If there's anything huge on it, you can sand it down a little bit, but it's not really going to change anything whatsoever in the line of a coil. This is all mechanical. There's absolutely nothing that you can do here as long as the spacing is right to make this work. The coil is bad in this case. Spacing looks good. You just want it basically as close to the coil as you can without it touching. I don't know, I think it's 10 thousandths or something that they recommend, maybe 15. Just depends on the engine. But we're gonna get a new coil ordered for this. We'll throw this on and go from there. Say you were getting spark and it still wasn't running on this cylinder. You're gonna wanna pull the valve cover and take a look at the valves and make sure they're going in and out. Make sure the push rods aren't bent, nothing's off, everything's tight, and the spacing's good. You can look up valve spacing by your engine numbers relatively easily, no matter what. But if your cylinder's not firing, it's either going to be spark or compression, or it's not going to be getting fuel. Well, we already know the other side's getting fuel, so this one should also. Those two things should solve your issue. Now, if both of these cylinders are firing and you're still getting it to bog down, you know you're going to have an issue with either A, the air cleaner not getting enough air, or B, not getting enough fuel, or bad quality fuel. We already talked about the bad quality fuel here. Now, if both of these are running, it's bogging down and everything, you're going to go into your carburetor, because it's going to be a carburetor issue. There's a lot of times where it's a carburetor issue. In this case, it's definitely not. These carburetors aren't horrible to, you know, clean and rebuild and stuff like that, but it's going to be a carburetor issue at that point if both cylinders are working, but it's still bogging down when you're under a load. Now, this is granted that you've already checked your deck and made sure that your deck isn't, you know, the clutch bearing or one of the bearings in the deck isn't going out. That could be bogging down the engine also. You can usually test that pretty well. If it's bogging down like that and it's a carburetor issue, you can usually give it just a little bit of choke and see if it starts to run better. If it does, it's a carburetor or a fuel or air related issue at that point. We got the coil here in. It's a Kohler 24584-201-S. Now, I talked to him about this wiring and I tried to get him to repair it. He doesn't want anything to do with that. He says that wiring's been there for a long time and that it's fine. Said some mouse or something chewed it at one point, so he repaired it. Well, guess we'll leave that wiring the way that it is. Wish we didn't have to do that. The new kit comes with new screws and then a new coil. Looks basically exactly the same as the old one. I guess the tab is on the opposite side. Anyway, I'm going to get this pulled off, get it installed. That's an 8mm. You want to be careful on these bolts. A lot of times they will snap off on you. That's why they include new ones with it. Well, you can see there's two different sizes. I don't know what their issue was before and why they did that. I'm going to go ahead and install that one exactly the same way that it came off, just like such, even though the kill wire is on top. No big deal. And what we're going to do is we're going to use any old regular business card. Now I'm going to go ahead and tear this just in half to get me a good spacing as I come around to it. Set my coil there, and that's just to keep it out of the way of the fan. And I'm going to come right around and then line that up with the holes. Most business cards are about the perfect size. They say, I think 11 to 13 thousandths, but if you get a real thick one, it may not be the right size. I'm gonna now you want to be mindful when doing this. You want to kind of push it up against that card before you tighten it down. Now, I'm not tightening it down a lot right now. I'm going to do that all by hand. A lot of times these studs are kind of bad. I like to do all that by hand. Now, if you look in between the magnet and the coil, you should be able to see light. If you like shine light down through it, that'll tell you that it's spaced far enough away, but you want it very close to the magnet. We're going to hook up this kill. Alright. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab another spark plug. I'm going to pull the other side off and we're going to test this spark real quick, just to show you what it looks like if you're getting good spark. see where we got the best shot at. Could be just right here. Kind of hard to see there. Kind of hard to see, but you can see it on the spark plug. See if I can get a better picture for us. Definitely sparking. Getting something on the plug now, so that's a good thing. Probably got a lot of fuel in the cylinders. Go ahead and I'm not even going to choke it, I'm just going to hit it. Everything's out of the way at this point. We can test it. Everything else is hooked up the way that it needs to be. Nothing's going to get pulled in. Oh, I didn't even see that before. Well, it looks like that one's pretty old anyway. You can just hear the difference as the mower is running, that both cylinders are now working. I can unplug this one and show you guys that that one is in fact working, but you can hear it just in the noise of it. Now we've got a little bit of work to do. We've got to get some bolts going for this top where they were all missing. Maybe get this a little bit cleaned up. But other than that, that's how you go through figuring out how or why there's low power on a unit. Sometimes they kind of seem like a different issue, even though it's not the issue you're having with a mower. Always start with the simplest things first, of course. Start with the deck. You know, if you can, on this thing, I can grab a hold of this belt and I can move this very, very easily for the deck. Now it may make some noise because of the spring or whatever, but you should be able to grab and move that belt pretty easily. There should be no restriction really on those bearings. If there are, you may have an issue with the bearing locked up, one of the idler pulleys locked up, clutch bearing locked up. There's a lot of different things that can cause bogging down, but we always like to start there, make sure everything's free. Then we go to fuel and air. You know, is it a fuel or air related issue, which is one of the most common things. Once we eliminate that or think that everything's good as far as that goes, rule that out as a likely possibility, then we go to each side, you know, test each side independently. If you've got one side working independently than the other one, you narrow it down from there. Both of them are working independently. You know, the likely cause is going to be a carburetor fuel air related issue. That, or it could be a compression issue, you know, on more worn units. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe.